we now have a legitimate path to the return of the Captain, thanks to Varka's story quest setting the precedence that souls can be split after merging with one another and Varka returning from the ley lines. Why? Yep, that's the only why. It's a story quest, to be fair, but the implications from this one, titillating. You know, because again, they pretty clearly, in my opinion, gives us a path to how the Captain can return, but we'll talk about that Saturday. Anyway, those stories start in Mondstadt. We got a letter from Venti asking us to meet up with him, so we do, and share with him our journey in Nod-krai. Venti is excited at the fact that the situation has been handled. Varka's going to return to Mondstadt soon. We ask Venti how exactly it's possible he's met Varka, given he should have been asleep when Varka was in Mondstadt, but Venti clarifies he was only half asleep, and saw Varka taking down a ruin guard at the Thousand Winds Temple. And then we hear someone taking down a ruin guard at the Thousand Winds Temple, and it's... God damn it, Akam! It's Loan, a vice captain in the Knights of Favonius, who was on the expedition with Varka. We ask why we never saw this nigga in Nod-krai then, and he says, I don't know, something about being a lone wolf. Loan's in Mondstadt to deliver some of Varka's letters, with one letter going to Venti. Venti reads the letter, and a disconcerted look washes over his face before assuring us nothing serious is in the letter. We head to Loan to deliver the rest of the letters, and alone, Venti reveals that some of the contents of the letter involve the Abyss, Andreas, and the Wild Hunt. Over with Varka in Nod-krai, you get the displeasure of playing Varka solo to take out some Wild Hunt stragglers. A bit further ahead, Varka finds a wolf's head and greets it as Andreas. While approaching, we hear the voice of the first knight of Boreas. Varka does some voodoo to absorb the wolf's head into his sword, and we learn it was the first knight of Boreas who gave Andreas the name Boreas. Instead, an angry-looking Andreas spawns in, and Varka preps himself for a fight. Back in Mondstadt, everyone's reading their letters, and we notice Jean looks off after reading hers, so we check in on her, and she reveals what Varka told to her before he left, which is, should he die, she's the new Grand Master, and to make sure a new Knight of Boreas is chosen, which for those unaware is just anyone who passes Boreas or Andreas' trial. Jean gives us a bit of a history lesson, stating the first Knight of Boreas had a disciple named Ravenwood, who became the next Knight of Boreas, and, from there a long lineage of Knights of Boreas would be born. Jean then tells us, despite being one of the Four Winds, Andreas is actually from Nod-krai. This leads Jean to believe that the reason the expedition started was because Varka may have believed that the troubles in Nod-krai were originating from Andreas, when in actuality it was fucking Rerir, the Wild Hunt, and the Doctor. We then head to Angel's Share, give him Varka's letter, and Diluc is just Varka asking once again, Diluc, join the Knights of Favonius! Diluc says no. Rosaria then gives us another history lesson about a disciple of the Knights of Boreas, Rostam, which, for the keen-eyed among us, Rostam was Signora's lover. Anyway, Rostam had a disciple who was a damn good knight, named Roland the Bloodstained Knight. He used to be called the White Knight, but killed so many things, 500 years ago during the Cataclysm, with this strict, unyielding sense of justice, he stained his armor black, hence the new title. To this day, no one knows what happened to the Bloodstained Knights. We're still confused about this whole thing, so we decided to ask Andreas himself, but when we head to Wolvendome, we find that the Wild Hunt has overrun the place. We check on the dog, and he states the Wild Hunt followed his trail from Nod-krai across the ley lines. He goes on to state the source of all this is the part of him that's in Nod-krai. We ask if there's two of him, and it's then Venti spawns in, and we get this fantastic Loan delivery.
The Wolf King, Andreas, was particularly adept in this art. Otherwise, no remnants of his soul would have survived till the present day.
Huh? The bard's back?
Venti then gives another history lesson. Fucking lot of history lessons. Our third one. Boreas once wandered into the Sealy Hall, and it's there he met the worst person who ever lived, Koitar, who was the first angel. Eventually, Boreas became curious about humanity, so he went south to Mondstadt during the Archon War to help take down Decarabian. He then decided Barbados would be better fit to rule Mondstadt, so he left Mondstadt to return to the Sealy Palace up north and went to sleep. 1,000 years ago, a knight would then awaken Boreas and ask Boreas to go check out Mondstadt. So Boreas went with the knights, but not before splitting his soul into two pieces, leaving one in Nod-krai and letting the other journey to Mondstadt. The part of him in Mondstadt would then pour his power into the ley lines upon seeing how great Mondstadt was and how he wanted to protect this place, and what we see before us is what remains of him. Anyway, Andreas says the part of him in Nod-krai is probably getting torn up by the Wild Hunt thanks to all that's gone down recently in Nod-krai. That's not all. Boreas smells blood in the ley lines, which we take to mean the blood-stained knights. We question how that's possible, and Boreas says the last place anyone saw the blood-stained knights was Khaenri'ah. Venti then arranges to have Dvalin fly us to Nod-krai, but before we depart, Boreas, who read Varka's sorry-ass kit, decides to imbue some of his power into Razor's sword and asks us to give it to Varka when we see him to give him some more power. Now, in actuality, there's a useful thought in the sword that he wants Varka to see. Boreas would just, give his power to Varka directly, but clarifies human hearts can't bear the soul of a wolf, especially that of a god. We then fly on over to Nod-krai, help take out the Wild Hunt, and the Roland Andreas hybrid then decides to just flee. We regroup at base, and all of Nod-krai, except like the 3 people in all the land who could end this entire debacle in 7 seconds, are here. Varka gives a breakdown of the situation to all, which is Roland the Bloodstained Knight has seized control of Andreas' will and is presently leading the Wild Hunts. We wonder why Roland is involved with the Abyss, but leave that question for the time being. Varka then informs everyone killing Andreas is not a solution, as when a god dies on Teyvat, terrible things happen to the people and environments around them. And Nefa then questions how some gods, including Andreas of Mondstadt, then have managed to die without fucking up the land, so it's then we hand the buff sword to Varka, and we see the moment Boreas died, he just sort of went peacefully and poured his power into the ley lines. So all we gotta do is convince the Andreas of Nod-krai to do the same. We need to collect some wolf's fragments, which are just bits of Andreas' spirits, the thing Varka saw earlier, and return them to Andreas. So he becomes, more whole and pure and can make the decision himself without the Abyss corrupting him. Varka then reveals he was only able to plan ahead for all this thanks to the Hexen Zirkel, who revealed unto him an abyssal calamity brewing in the north, which caused him to go on his expedition. We then head with Varka to retrieve a fragment. He absorbs it into his sword. Varka then hears the struggle between Andreas' pure heart and Roland whispering evil thoughts. Varka then asks something interesting. Can we separate the Roland part from the Andreas spirits? Keep both intact, but just undo the fact that they've merged. To do this, we need to pull the Roland parts by anchoring him to reality, and to do that we use a memento in the form of a letter Rostam, his mentor, wrote for Roland 500 years ago. We do this and we see Roland's thoughts. He was mad at the fact that Khaenri'ahns were being turned into hilichurls, so he decided to serve the Abyss, and he says the line,
"If Abyss be thy name, I pledge to you my loyalty."
It's then we hear Vedrfolnir's voice. Vedrfolnir saw us, despite the fact that we looked into Roland's thoughts 500 years in the past. This tells us Roland got a vision from Vedrfolnir, learned of Khaenri'ah's fate, and decided to serve the Abyss. This is why he exists in the modern day. It's because the Abyss replicated him to a T. Varka tells us he has a plan. He tells it to us, and we call the plan batshit. We then track down the final fragment, and Roland spawns in. He and Varka fight, and Roland's mad Varka isn't trying.
It's over. Your sword lies shattered. The wolf spirit and the thoughts you blindly placed your faith in have nowhere left to dwell. Join me and pledge your allegiance to the Abyss, Knight of Boreas. One day you will understand that the only righteous path for those of true virtue is the path of darkest truths.
For the next part, it's over to you, Outlander who caught the wind.
Varka then awakens in a strange place. We pick up the swords of the past knights of Boreas, and eventually make it to Andreas' heart, but are stopped by Roland, who decides to play a really long game of peekaboo with us. Varka says he's past his peak, and the Roland before us confirms he's nothing more than an imitation cast by the Abyss. Roland says because he broke Varka's blade that housed Andreas' spirit, Varka's plan is doomed, but Varka says not quite yet. Varka then speaks to Andreas. Roland says the power of friendship doesn't work in this world. Oh, you sweet summer child, if only you knew. Andreas then says he wishes to return to the ley lines, indicating his spirit has been made whole by the fragments that were supposedly housed in Varka's sword. Roland wonders how this is possible given he broke Varka's weapon, which housed Andreas' fragments before realizing Varka stored the soul of a god in his heart. Taking advice from Venti, Andreas, and the captain, Roland says Varka's soul is collapsing and realizes the sword was just a decoy. Roland states when Andreas joins the ley line, so too will Varka now that they've merged.
Until I return, I leave them in your care. The Knights of Favonius will always welcome you. Come on! To Mondstadt!
Dear Grandmaster.
To Varka. To Varka.
Family.
No pig call.
Poetry and letters were humanity's earliest means of expressing their thoughts. Make sure they all get delivered, Outlander who caught the wind.
Grandmaster.
Master.
Varka.
Uncle Varka! He's the right to us!
For Varka.
The thoughts of others anchor you, reversing the assimilation. Using your connections, relying on outside help. This is not the way of a knight. The abyss can sustain me no longer. But now, countless souls who died unjustly will emerge to prevent your return. If you believe in your path, then grant them release. Carve your way out through bloodshed. Varka, mightiest knight of Boreas.
This is how it ends. Throw the plan out of the window. Fight my way to victory. Well, that suits me just fine!
Then fight our way out the ley lines, pour one out for the boys, and wake up in Mondstadt at the end!